Hey guys, Tominha here, and today we are going to talk about the first month of Dawntrail Final Fantasy XIV. This expansion that a lot of players are waiting for, a new vision for the game, and which apparently isn't that good. Well, let's talk first about story. In my interpretation, it's basically separated in two main arcs. In fact, these two arcs technically deal with two parallel societies, but the first arc has a great emphasis on the main character, and believe me, it's not you. It's actually a pretty dull character for many players. Some are even complaining a lot about the acting of the character itself. The dubbing part wasn't that pleasant in English either. I heard it is in other languages. I personally found it pretty cool, but the main character isn't exciting, and I believe that's what take away some of the fun from this first moment, because the focus is often on this character. Yes, I'm not saying the name. The second arc deals with a parallel society that is a kind of different and has a particular drama which I personally found cool. I liked the second part more than the first. There's an area there in the middle of the path that's like a transition between them two. As I said, the story isn't all that good. The Steam reviews are not so positive, even website reviews have already pointed out this weakness, let's say. The story really wasn't good for the first moment, and I believe that this is very negative because this first block of story has to be good because it's the main story of the expansion. The rest then is a complement slash transition to the next expansion. And the first month, the main story is boring. We have a big problem because Final Fantasy is recognized as a good narrative game, or at least a narrative game. Even though for me, it's wrong to think that way about Final Fantasy XIV because it's an MMORPG, and MMORPGs always has the premise of you interacting with people mainly in combat content. But anyway, the story is weak, it's not that good, and it's displeasing, this is very negative. Let's talk about combat now. The combat part had reasonable changes, nothing huge. There was a little rework in the Astro, some good changes on Dragoon too. The update from 90 to 100 is very specific to each job. There will be some, for example, Summoner. I didn't feel any difference, really small. In Warrior the difference was also very small. You get new skills, but the execution itself in general doesn't change that much. There will have other jobs that the dynamics change well, like Mage. I felt that a lot of things changed, for example. So I think it depends on the player and how he deal with the job. That's the part personal feeling if there has been a deep change. A strong point to say the healers continued satisfied, healer strike no, and it seems like no one wants to play Astro. I did 200 trials before the raid's release, and I saw very few astrologians, so there's something wrong. If it were good, everyone would be playing. For example, Viper and the Picto, the new super cool jobs. You see many in the game. Talking so much about combat, let's go into stances. The dungeons for me aren't the same line they always follow it. There will be few dungeons that got a little more elaborated mechanics. In general, these are always on the same average as in Endwalker, or which we saw in Shadowbringers. Honestly, maybe you will feel a slight change in dungeons at level 100, but only there. Before that, in the level 97 dungeon, you have a boss there, perhaps you are going to move a lot like dancing, but it's also nothing to say, my god, how impossible it is. No, it's not, honestly it's not. The trials follow the same line of reasoning. Maybe the extreme ones are in the same level of Zeramus, whoever played Endwalker. The first, at least, I think that is at the same level in terms of difficulty. The second trial would already say that it will require a little more from the player. You have to be turning the camera many times, paying attention to other environmental details that greatly influence whether you will stay alive or not. But the overall still not hard. I don't believe they are truly difficult. Honestly, the normal raids that come out also don't have anything very complex. There is a slight punishment in some skills, slightly enlarged, and also some mechanics are fast. However, I don't see anything that complex because it's still a very early stage. People still have weak gear. There's not a lot of equipment and people can take a while to get decent gear. So look, I played day 1. I literally did all the content very early. Then I can say I had weak gear. Potentially the difficulty that people feel is their lack of knowledge of the fight, something natural in this game at first moment, and the gear not going beyond the average level that the instance requires. However, maybe you feel it in one raid or another, or in a dungeon given as expert. Maybe you feel a little bit of additional stress. Let's say that. It's something that even Yoshi-P had commented that it will be considered bringing back. There's an interview he gave. He said that the game started to get a little bit, those were not the word he used, okay? But the game started to get a bit trivial, very simple, and potentially he could be bringing this stress back. And I feel like he brought this to some key moments. About the part of the gathering and crafting, jobs didn't have much change. So exciting, no. Few interesting new gathering crafting passives, a couple of new skills too, that might bring some interesting effects. But nowadays everyone uses autocrafter, so it won't make much difference. It's the typical Square recipe once again being repeated for these jobs too. I don't know what they want, really. In short, I think the initial content is not bad. If you add it all up, you have a lot of currencies there, things like Shard Fate, you have hunt stuff, you have all the natural leveling progression, the story itself, but I think that because the story isn't good and there's a lack of more secondary activities that will come with time, maybe it's still not a good time for you to play now, especially if you are not a player who plays endgame. If you are an endgame player, Savage tier is already running, so can be interesting for you. I give you a good overview. The story isn't that good for me and for a lot of players, so if you are not a player who plays the game, let's say more intensely, that you want to complete all things, or don't want to do the end game, maybe this isn't the best time to play. I would at least recommend waiting for one more patch or another to play Dawntrail. Well guys, for today it's the video. Anything, send in the comments, we'll interact, and who knows, I might even be able to make another video talking more details. So that's it. Stay safe and see you next time.